for the day. And to wrap it up, we have a very intriguing topic on bridging gap with digital pathways for young women. It is especially interesting because digital opportunities align well with societal expectation of women to be working. And Digital Impact Office in India, where he empowers youth through the Cisco Networking Academy program. Next up, we have Natasha Jog. She's the Director of Public Policy at Meta India, where she oversees policy and program initiatives, especially for Instagram. Then we have Shruti. She's the Chief Communication Officer at NASCOM Foundation with over 20 years of experience in brand reputation and communications. We have Arundhati up next. She's the founder and CEO of Mentor Together, a nonprofit that has led youth mentoring movements in India for the past 15 years. We have Ian McBride. He's the head of Digital Impact and Sustainability at BT Group, leading social impact efforts through technology and digital skills in partnerships with the British Asian Trust. And of course, we have our moderator, Yasmin Riaz. She's the head of development for British Asia Trust. She is also leading the fundraising and partnerships, and she's going to take over this conversation here.
Thank you so much. And good evening, everyone, esteemed panelists on the stage here with me, and a full house at the end of the day. I think that's a big relief, if I may say so, but it's also great. I think it speaks a lot about nudges, convening, and collaborative efforts. So great to have all of you here. Thank you for your time. And it's been a great 2 days with very invigorating, enriching sessions around a lot of topics, one of which we are also going to sort of repeat because there's been enough said about technology and about women empowerment. But I think we're straddling two strategic objectives of the Government of India, which is digital inclusion and women empowerment, among the other two, which are typically youth employment and skill development. Those are the 4 top priorities, and today the panel is going to be straddling 2 of them around digital inclusion and women empowerment. I think it would be not really out of order to start off with a brief introduction about British Asian Trust. The Trust has a registered body in India, and we work typically to reduce poverty, inequality, and injustice across 5 to 6 states in India. And when I speak about poverty, it's also about holistic development. We look at areas like education, skill development, financial inclusion, mental health, and women empowerment. And last but not the least, we're also looking at conservation in a very big way. So climate resilience and green jobs and all of that fall under the conservation piece as well. So that's a little bit about British Asian Trust. And to kick us off on the discussion, let me just build a little bit of context and background before we launch ourselves into the subject of bridging the gap. What are the gaps that we are talking about, essentially? So just to unpack a little bit, we're talking about education gaps. If I were to share a few statistics around these gaps, on the education front, we have roughly about 59% of women and young girls who do not complete 10 years of schooling. That's the gap that we're talking about on the education front. If we talk about the employment gap, 1 in 4 women are really looking for jobs as compared to 1 in 2 for men. In terms of the gender gap, we're looking at in terms of gender, we're looking at patriarchal norms and safety aspects which prevent women from getting into the workforce, literally. And there is also the access gap. Again, in terms of access to internet, 1 in 4 women are able to access the internet as compared again to 1 in 2 for men. So those are some of the gaps if we look at broadly. And why is it essential for women to be included in the growth story? And why digital inclusion, therefore? If we were to consider some of those aspects, we are in the midst of a digital revolution. There has been enough said across a number of panels about how we are digitally ahead globally, how COVID has played a role in accelerating some of the ways of working. Financial transactions are at a phenomenally high level. We have a lot of government services which are being made available on digital platforms, allowing for easy dissemination to the grassroots. We also have 691 million women in India who cannot be left behind in the growth story. They have to be taken along with the rest of India. And there are estimates which state that if the women equal men in the workforce, the GDP, the Indian GDP, could grow by about 27%. So these are factoids which should sort of inspire and instill in us the urge to sort of move ahead on this front. And with those thoughts, I'll bring in the panel to speak a little bit about how we can bridge these gaps and what is being done by each one of them within the scope of their work to sort of move ahead, move the needle on this particular subject. So Ian, let me begin with you. BT has been doing phenomenal work in digitally empowering women for the last so many years. It would be great if you could share insights from the work that you've been doing and speak a little bit about how digital literacy can be positioned alongside formal education to ensure that women and young girls can gain from that. Over to you, Ian.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and talk to you today, Yasmin. You've been a very great partner at the British Asians Trust, along with the other partners that we have right across the country. I think, and on that question, I think the first thing I would say is that it's absolutely vital to integrate digital literacy very early on in the school curriculum. I think sometimes we see right across with the brilliant partners, of which Arundhati is one that we have here, that too often digital literacy or any kind of STEM or computer-related training comes much, much too later into the school career, and people are playing catch-up. It needs to be brought in much earlier, and it needs to be brought in at a much younger age. I think also it needs not to be brought about just as a topic on its own, as a sole subject, but I think we need to incorporate technology right through a whole range of subjects in the school curriculum to build confidence using technology. So, for example, there are some really great ed tech tools out there that can bring about adaptive learning that develop skills in technology while also building confidence within technology tools that are there. And I think we're not seeing enough of that. I think also the other thing we see, and it's right across the board, is that we need to address the gender norms and barriers that we see that are right across the program. So we can go in with the best of intentions and talk about imparting skills, but unless we're changing mindsets in the communities where we work, and a lot of our organizations are doing that, and some of them are here today. Arundhati, your organization is one. Meenakshi, Powell, your organization is another. To work in communities to get about that community buy-in so that we challenge and get community influencers and develop that ecosystem to such an extent that they build support for girls in education, and particularly girls in technical education. I think there's another thing as well, is obviously the infrastructure issues that we have. Obviously, you're a huge country here, and we can talk about access rurally, or access, the rural-urban divide. I want to give an example of one thing that we did here with one of our partners, again with Natasha that's here, was during lockdown, when it was particularly difficult for young people, and especially young women, to get access to devices, to get access to online learning. They weren't able to get to the schools. Natasha launched a library, a devices library during lockdown, which gave young women access to devices where they couldn't normally get a hold of. They could get access to online training courses, They could get access to NSERT CBSE programs. They started very simply by doing working with Google Works programs, basic internet access, and the take-up, we found out that was really terrific. You know, put technology, put handsets in young people's hands, they'll work it out much faster than we ever do. And so I think that's another thing we need to do, is not just accept that we need to give training or help people. That happens quite easily when we give them access, but it's also working with the infrastructure. I also think there's a massive opportunity to be inventive and innovative and fun in bringing about participative learning, and the role of public-private partnerships and multi-stakeholder partnerships. And I want to give another example of that. In Bangalore and Karnataka, we work with a partner going to school. And we've developed this really, really terrific program with them where we have MOUs with the state and city governments where we go into schools 3 days a week, and we use football as a means of attracting girls into the state schools. A lot of the state schools, these are girls in grades 5 to 10, they don't have access to computers in their schools, so quite often it's the first time they're actually using this technology. And they're playing football. We've got Bangalore football team in there coming out and using their skills and giving their time. They're attracted by football. We then give them access to laptops and technology, and they're spending 3 days a week developing coding skills using Scratch that they get in there, and other life and entrepreneurial skills. That then goes on by the time they get a little bit older. They will then have access to pitch for businesses where they can obtain seed funding in their local communities to help solve for climate action. So they will go and develop collect information from the local communities. We're partnering JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank with that. So it's like a whole process from starting from a young age where they're giving them access to devices and training and coding that they wouldn't have, that they would get outside of the government school network. Then we're giving them life, entrepreneurial and STEM skills that they get there, and then we're helping them set up their businesses. So I think there's a role there for corporates, non-profits, education to play, to work together there. And I think the last thing I would say is the role of mentoring in this. Mentoring is hugely important. And I think when young women see women in technology and have access to women in technology and are able to get access to women to mentor them in technology, it really spurs them on to progress in that field and take an interest in careers in that field. And Arundhati can speak much more better about this than me, because she runs a terrific organization called Mentor Together, and connect young women with mentors from industry right through a whole series of colleges up and down the country. And those women are now not just getting the technical support they need, but they're getting access to resources online and to people and women, leaders in industry, who can help them in their careers.
Right, great. Thank you so much for those very relevant points on digital literacy and digital enablement, Ian. And I think that also forms a perfect segue to lead on to Arundhati to speak about the platform that she runs, a little bit of the work that is done by Mentor Together. But it'll be good to know a little bit on how digital platforms can support young women to thrive in today's job markets. What are some of the skills that are required, and how are you looking at tackling some of those needs on the ground, Arundhati? Over to you.
Sure. No, thank you. Thank you so much for having us here, and I think we're very proud partners of British Asian Trust and BT. I'd like to speak a little bit of the context of young women in colleges, right? That's the group we work with. And like in many other cases, it's this situation of the glass half full and the glass half empty, right? The glass half full is that in the last 2 decades, really of a push of getting young people into colleges, today there are 40 million young people studying, 43 million young people studying in colleges, a tertiary education degree, and equal numbers of them are women, right? In the last 2 decades itself, it's become a gender par number. What's the glass half empty? globally, growth of an economy and the increasing education of women results in more participation of women in the formal economy. Especially tertiary education is sort of the gateway to the knowledge economy and jobs there. That's not, yeah, we're all nodding, right? Because we all know the statistic. That's not happened in India. Only 30% of the women with college and tertiary education degrees are active in the workforce. And that means not just those who have jobs, but even those who are looking for jobs. So we've lost that remaining 70%. What we saw an interesting opportunity is to say that then if we've managed to get all of these young women into college and they're there for these 4 years, what is the opportunity to create a mentoring ecosystem? And we realized that digital is the only way to do it at scale to solve for 3 problems that we see that young women uniquely face and that mentorship is uniquely positioned to tackle. The first thing we found was that the skills deficit, right? Most young people are not learning for the jobs that they will do. They don't have the access to life skills, soft skills, and they're not going to learn it through college curriculum. So connecting them to mentors is really the only, is a great way because then you're through conversation doing this with mentors who are in the industry and professionals. And just to speak a little bit about how we do this on the ground, we have great partners like BT who bring through corporate campaigns, have large numbers of their employees sign up to mentor. These are professionals that on average have like 7-8 years of work experience on average. So they have a lot of experience to share and they do it all as volunteers. On the student side, we partner with colleges across the country. We've had a couple of state governments that have been great champions. Jayesh sir is here, and so Telangana, through a body of theirs called TASK, the Telangana Academy of Skills and Knowledge, which is this really unique body set up to coordinate workforce readiness programs, help us access young people across the state colleges. And 70% of those who sign up for the program we see are young women, because there's a lot of just hunger for how do I use this college education to get ahead in life. So mentoring to solve for the skills deficit is the first thing we do. The second thing we do is mentoring to solve for the network gap, right? Like you said, you can only be what you see, right? If your network is not of young people, of women who have achieved a lot, gone on for diverse careers, your role models are going to be limited to that. And then the information and the opportunities you can access through that network is also severely limited. And we realized that by creating this very large digital mentoring network, we have 15,000 mentors registered on our platform, that there's just so much social capital we can tap. We're really just like 1 or 2 degrees away from getting young people access to what they need through a mentoring network. This network has come today to bear to help 2 of our mentees land jobs at BT, right? Which is for the first time that BT Digital is opening up its recruitment to. And it was an opportunity in plain sight, really, that these are young women going through a program that BT CSR supports, and they can be great candidates for the pipeline of BT HR, but it took a leader like Ian to really champion this inside the company and get them to open up their hiring. So mentoring for networks is the second idea. And the third that, like you all have said, is really how can mentoring networks, digital mentoring networks, advocate for more transformative gender norms, right? We realize that it's easy to solve for skills and networks, but the real barriers are that at some point, young women are just not being championed to pursue careers, and it's not them, it's really people around them. We all know the very, very horrific things that happened in our country in the last 2 weeks, right? Imagine how many young women have been dissuaded from pursuing medicine, have been told that this is not something you should do because it's unsafe for you, right? Those are just beliefs and norms that keep changing the trajectories of young women. How can mentors and this large community of advocates stand up for more gender transformative norms? Stand in the corner of young women and say, you're not alone, we're here to support you. If there's someone coming in your way, we can be advocates for you. It's not easy for young people to do it themselves. So really the digital network has allowed us to create this countrywide set of champions who stand up for young women, and that's how we're hoping that we can make a difference to some of these statistics and ensure that young women reach college, but very much so they enter the workforce as well.
Great. I think that was a brilliant example of demand and supply. There's a huge need for young women and girls to have career readiness and mentoring, and you're using digital means to get to that. So perfect example. Thank you so much for sharing that. Moving on to Shruti from NASSCOM. Shruti, what innovative technologies or approaches have been effective for promoting digital literacy and empowerment for girls. And if you could, spend a little bit of time also talking about the Digital India initiative. How is it working from an employment point of view? We've spoken about literacy and education, but from enabling the employment aspects, especially in a rural setting, how is the Digital India initiative sort of breaking barriers and moving on?
Thank you, Yasmin. And I mean, to be part of such an interesting discussion with so many different perspectives, and then to be sitting between this audience and the chai, it's a difficult one. So I'm not going to quote numbers, I'm not going to put out facts. I think you've heard a lot of them already. What I will do is tell you a story of somebody who I met just about last week. She's a person who is in Bihar, a young girl, 17-year-old. Her father is a postman. She has been enrolled in a good school, but has never gone to it for the past 3 or 4 years. Why? Because going to school is pointless. There are labs, but there are no teachers. There are teachers who facilitate maybe opening the lab. They have the key to the lab, but they don't know really what to teach them. So when we met this girl, we just taught her how to use her smartphone to access technology. That was the magic. After that, she learned, she accessed all the educational websites on her own. She accessed mentoring networks like yours. And today, she is somebody who's looking for a job through the NASCOM Foundation, skilling portal. Now, so you talk about innovation, and I'm talking about access. That's how stark the gap is when it comes to rural India. And that is the story I think we need to go back to. The country has done a very, very good job of putting out a vision. The Digital India vision, Vikasit Bharat, I think that tells us what we need to do. The entire idea of inclusive growth, I think that's brilliant. But how do we get there? For us, with NASCOM Foundation, the work we've been doing around digital literacy and skilling, what we've realized is inclusion, there are really 2 parts to it. One is, of course, digital inclusion. That's what we do. Tech for good is our philosophy. So, everything for us starts with that. But as we stumbled and learned, we realized that for inclusion to happen, it has to be really backed by economic inclusion. Unless there is a motive of economic inclusion, nothing else will happen. So the minute Dipali's father, the girl that I'm talking about, understood that it's going to be easy for her to get a job post this particular entire digital intervention, he got her a phone. Before that, the phone was a no. And also, I think that brings me to the second part. While there is a phone, a lot of people in rural India today have a phone. I think 95% is what we are talking about. But meaningful digital use, that again is a problem. So we need, while the support of the government is there, while the networks are there, how do we come together to create access? How do we come together to create or nudge them towards, and I'm using the word nudge very carefully here, nudge them towards meaningful impact? I think those are the things that we need to look at today. Of course, innovation is big, but I think there's still a long way. There's still a lot of groundwork to be done before we get to inclusion, before we get to innovation, especially in the rural part of the country. The story completely changes when you're looking at the urban, when you're looking at urban women. There, yes, innovation is huge. We are struggling. I mean, while women in STEM, women in tech is a buzzword today, we are struggling for women to really be empowered in that entire space. They still need mentors there. They still need networks there which can propel them forward. I think that combination is what we must strive for.
Great. I think you also touched upon another gap, the rural-urban divide that exists, right, within the gender bias.
Absolutely.
And
I think, with a country of India's size,
Yeah.
there are a lot of different kind of gaps that we need to, everything has to be contextualized. Innovation has to be contextualized. If we are looking at, like for instance, you have a social enterprise. I think you very beautifully contextualized it to a certain audience. And, that's where we need to, innovation needs to be contextualized, and we need to work with those different fabrics. I think that's important.
Something that I read about, pre-marriage for girls, phones are considered taboo because it could be a risk for their reputation. And post-marriage, usage of phone by women is considered as an interruption to their caregiving responsibilities. So that's how deeply embedded the gender divides runs through, whether we're talking about urban or rural
Absolutely,
facets.
and that is why I brought up this entire conversation about meaningful digital use, as well as having an economic impetus to the entire thing.
Right.
I think those two things break all social barriers, and that's what we've realized in our experience. And with NASCOM Foundation, we do a lot of programs which are in rural India, but also the aspirational districts. And the story holds true even there. We find that a woman who is given a technology device with a very clear economic reasoning to it, which gives her independence, all of that, then it's okay. Suddenly the social barriers don't exist. So I think we need to look at that. While we are creating programs, while we are creating models, we need to make sure we integrate that lesson into it.
Sure. Moving on to Natasha, if we were to talk about digital empowerment of women, what role could advocacy and policy change play in enabling digital assets for women?
Thank you, Yasmin, and thank you to everyone who's been here, who's here today. It's just so wonderful to speak with a room with this kind of vibe and energy and participation, so thank you. And thank you for having me. I think everything that the panel has said is kind of made my job here much easier, because we're seeing all of this and more on our platforms. Every day we see incredible examples of how access to technology is improving lives, especially for girls and women. We're seeing how they are leveraging economic opportunities that the digital world is providing them. We are seeing how that is fostering entrepreneurship, how that is fostering innovation on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to just illustrate that with one small data point, which I have been unable to commit to memory in the last few minutes, so I'm just going to read it out. And these are numbers from 2023, which is last year, and kind of talk to since the start of the pandemic, more than 60%, that's 60% of Instagram businesses in India have begun to be self-identified as women-owned. That is and for Facebook, we are seeing that nearly 50% of all women-led businesses on Facebook in India have been set up since the start of the pandemic. And someone said about how, the pandemic was a game changer, and we've seen that on our platforms as well. More than 45% of Facebook groups that talk about entrepreneurship. If you're familiar with the platform, then you know that Facebook, you can create groups and bring in like-minded individuals to talk about topics that interest you or your passion. It could be education, entrepreneurship, health, caregiving, and what have you. And 45% of Facebook groups related to entrepreneurship created since 2021, which is again pandemic years, have been created by women. So these are some of those numbers that we can speak to. There's a whole bunch, but it is talking to how women are really raring to go and actively participate in our economy. Of course, we can always talk about how much further we need to go, and that is, I think, where policy, advocacy, and everything else that all of us are doing needs to come together. But Ian talked about an important point, and I want to kind of spend a couple of minutes, because that's where we've spent a significant amount of time and energy and resources in recent years on the advocacy and policy side, which is what is the work on education and with students looking like, and where can we step in to kind of make some kind of an impact there, holding the hands of these students. I'll give you a small example here. We've got a partnership with the largest education board in the country. It's called CBSE, the Central Board of Secondary Education. We began that program as a partnership to go in with to 26,000 schools, I think, across the country, and to go in with AR, VR, AI, which is artificial reality, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. When we had these cohorts and we had these students, and our targets, I think, were 10 million students to be trained in over 3 years, 1 million teachers over the same period. We realized that we had a great opportunity to set up a course on digital citizenship. What does that look like? Because we had participants, we had them, we had their attention, we had energetic participation across what we were trying, the skills that we were trying to impart them. And so we started something called digital citizenship, and it's now called Digital Nagrik, and the idea just being to create those empowered, digitally aware citizens of tomorrow. And what I think the one reason why I personally feel that this is a success story for us, and one that we're trying to replicate to different states, and we've got something going on exactly the same thing now in Karnataka, and hopefully other state boards will also follow, is that we talked about the skills that these students need to have to be future ready. Someone talked about the jobs of tomorrow, and do we have those skills? Let's keep the skills. Along with that, we will also help you, empower you to be aware what does it take to be a responsible digital citizen. And I think that's also evolving. At one point, it was all about how do you create a strong password and what do you do with unwanted contact or if someone's reaching out to you. Then we moved to what is phishing, what does phishing look like, what do you need to be aware of. Today we're doing bullying and harassment, we're talking about AI, we're talking about, hey, this is the potential of AI, and this is why we need to talk about AI and in the safety context also in the classrooms as well. So I think that is something that we are actively thinking through, and that's where I think a lot of the, I beg your pardon, policy advocacy work also comes in, which is because I think what we have is some kind of a ring-type view to be able to see what's coming round the corner, and then to be able to identify the cohorts that we are going to be able to work with in that. Something else that has just come up, which is also, what do you do with underrepresented communities? How do you make sure that equity and access is real? And this is something that we've kind of really thought through over the years, and we've got a couple of examples on this, and we want to do a lot more, but we had this program called GOAL, Going Online as Leaders. It was basically with the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, looking at tribal communities. Women was an important part of that, so we had women, and we had youth, those who wanted to be in the entrepreneurship space, who would need to use the digital space to find markets, find customers, build their businesses online, just as small as it might be, but they wanted to leverage digital technologies. And in that, we tried to use the mentorship model. So we said, we will connect you with industry leaders, and we will try and, get you to hear from those who will inspire you. I mean, there's nothing that we say that, will work as much as that will. So we did that. You talked about the financial inclusion piece. And again, we worked with this great group in Maharashtra, and that's kind of like a small pilot that we've done, really hoping that we are able to build more on that, which is this group called Mandeshi, which is working on financial literacy as much as it is on digital literacy. But they use the WhatsApp chatbot, again, for the same purpose, to bring these women to talk entrepreneurship, to give them these access. And it's really been quite a significant intervention, in my view. I can actually go on and on about some of the work that we've done, but I hope that this has given you kind of a sense of what we are seeing, the areas of impact that we are seeing as well. Skilling. We've got a lot of programs on skilling because we've seen that women, as much as men in our experience, and sometimes when we are in these sessions on skilling, we see that the number of women really outnumber those of men, so we've seen that as well. But usually there is an equal number, and there is a real desire to understand what the online opportunities are, especially from women who want to start small businesses from home. They could be doing something with stitching and garments. They could be doing something with food. They could have own ideas. They could be something with teaching. I think the financial space is something that's really catching the interest of women as well, and they want to understand platforms, and they want to understand how they can reach their markets. Very often we hear a lot about the creator community. So young girls really wanting to put their ideas across, wanting to pursue their passions, but just not having access. And that's where the problem comes, because I think you touched upon the fact that if you're in an urban part of the country, then of course it's a very different scenario for you. The game is very different. Perhaps you can ask around and you'll have easier access. But if you're not, and I'm not even talking about tier 2 or 3 anymore, because I mean, what was tier 2 or 3 in my time, I think is a far more mainstream today. But kind of the smaller places which really would be off the map in a sense. And we're seeing a lot of growth online come from these parts of the country. And so we really need to go in, and that's the Indian, that's the young Indian, that's the woman, that's the girl, and all users actually that we are hoping to target. One thing very quickly, if you allow me to say, something else that has held women back often is it safe enough for me to be online? What is the kind of experience that I might have online? And therefore, a lot of what we are doing on the tool side of the house, on like, you know, our awareness programs, on if you do have an experience, how do you report? What is the value of reporting? And I think the need to do it is also in multiple languages. So we are really trying to make sure that we're going out in like 8 or 9 multiple languages. It's not enough because I mean, I think we have some 21, if I'm correct, official languages in this country, but I think we've identified language as kind of really wanting to kind of go in deeper. You really have to speak in their language. It's a bit of a cliche, but it really works. And that's kind of been the full landscape of the work that we are doing. I've just touched upon a high level, but I can see the clock is ticking away.
Thanks.
So
Thank you, Natasha. I think that was
would you
explained.
just give me 1 second to add a point to what Natasha just said? The first fact that you started with about, you know, women wanting, the number of women on social media platforms using it as a business opportunity. We run a program with women entrepreneurs, mostly artisans, in Madhya Pradesh and parts of Tamil Nadu. You know what is the first question they ask us? They enroll and they tell us, when are you going to teach us how to use Instagram to put up our... So I think those stats really add up to what it is.
Yeah, another important point about not just being out there, but how do you ensure that the most marginalized are also included through technology? And I think Meta, given the wherewithal that you have, has probably the, the capabilities to get that going. Very insightful takes on the subject, Natasha. Thank you so much. Moving on to Ishvinder now. I know that Cisco does some really path-breaking work on the digital front, and likely so because you're a technology company. The question that I have for you, Ishvinder, is how can corporate partnerships be leveraged to take forward the work on digital empowerment of women? What is some of the work that you have done in the recent past? And also from a sustainability angle, what are some of the metrics that need to be in place to ensure that sustainability is taken care of in digital empowerment programs?
Thanks, Yasmin, and thanks for having me here. So I think a lot of value has already been added, but this is a bit different spectrum which has been asked for me to add. So first of all, I think corporate partnership is very, very critical, because like what we run a global philanthropy program called Cisco Networking Academy. It's not a direct cash grant, although we have a specific program where we do direct cash as well, direct cash grant as well. So here, the formula is very simple, that we come together as a powerhouse of enabling and creating an ecosystem. So one key aspect is that providing the right content, providing the right technology, the platform, and enabling the change makers is one of the critical work which we do. And then we rely on the power of partnerships. One key partner in our work is the government, that way. And we have the partners who are actually executing the program at the ground level. So like logic is very, very clear that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You get a lot of things which is standardized, and it's a gold standard at a global level. You just need to identify the right people who need the access of those specific technologies or tools or the knowledge or skills, and navigate them towards learning and then empowering them. So everyone do the task which they are champion of, rather than the organization doing content, then finding people, then delivery, then placement. So it's sometimes remove the focus. So I also want to share one story on specifically on the women stuff. So when I took over this program 5 years back, so we were around doing 100,000 student, 1 lakh student every year. now since last 2-3 years, we are doing at least 500,000. So last year we just closed in Cisco, the financial year ended in July. So we just closed, last year it was 500,000. This year we empowered around 7.5 million. One key metrics which we track is very critical, that how many women participation happened. So when we started, it was around 25%, and we have brought it up to 33% of women learners that way. And we also ensure that the instructors, the trainers who we do the capacity building, they are also increasing. So from around 22%, now we are at around 31% of that particular thing. And like while we were doing training, etc., and Cisco, everyone knows that we were like traditionally we were hiring only from tier 1 colleges and couple of regional colleges in Karnataka. But couple of years back, we said when we are doing this program, why don't we go to everyone and democratize this access of at least getting to the opportunity? They should come, they should compete, and then get our equal right to fight for that particular, I would say, position. And in order to experiment that idea, we started by opening 100 positions in Cisco. The average package which we offered was much more than the colleges in tier 2, tier 3 cities usually get. And one such social impact story, there are many, but I'll highlight only one right now. So in Andhra, there was a village where educating women, especially in the engineering, was not a very good idea for the people there, because they feel that when students complete schooling, that in itself is a great story. And after that, they should be ready for the marriage. As you said, the pre, there are certain stuff, and the post, there are other commitments. But there was a manual scavenger, a sewage cleaner, that way, what we say. And this guy was very passionate, and he said, no, I want to ensure that my daughter reaches the right education. And he took loan, because he was not economically well, but somehow through the government scholarships and through the programs, etc., he managed to send her daughter to the college. And then this Ideathon program, which I was referring, it happened. And this girl got selected at Cisco. She started doing job at Cisco. And the broader change which happened, that after that one placement at Cisco from that village, everyone said that I want to ensure that my girl child should go to the college. So that is the great story. So I think we have similar stories coming up. And in terms of the impact, so we are very clear in terms of the impact. So like I said, we have to ensure it's not only for Cisco, but wider, that if you are targeting women empowerment, like we see this hall and this panel is already women empowered that way. So we have to track the participation of, I would say, in terms of what's the women percentage and what are the core participants. So like a lot of people, when we see the skilling or the training programs, a lot of people say we have X number of students who enrolled or started using our program. A lot of people say that we ensured that, okay, X number of people committed, but we track a very unique thing which we call as a student participant. So what we believe is that, first of all, enrolling a lot of people is not a very great stuff. I can go to a college, do one session, 1,000 people will enroll, but ensuring that those people are actively using or learning that way, that is what is core to any of the programs. So whether they are active users of that program, which is very critical metrics, and these metrics should be tracked well. These should be like analyzed from the previous data, so that we have right ideas whether our program is getting on the track what we wanted to achieve or not. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ishvinder. Going by some of the trends across most of the panel discussions, a lot of vision statements have been set out, a lot of intent for action has been articulated. So just picking up on that thread, if I were to ask all of the panelists here your views on a bit of, a peek into the future, what do you think are some of the threats that are emerging through the use of digital, by women? And what are some of the opportunities that could also be leveraged? So a little bit of perspective building on both of these aspects, on the threats and the opportunities in the future that we foresee. Ian, would you like to go, please?
Yeah, sure. I think these are very uncertain times, and if we go back 10, 20, 50 years ago, I don't think the times are so different when we were as scared of technology overtaking and taking away our jobs the way that we are now. It certainly happened in my parents' and grandparents' generation, and you may have heard comments recently by our Chief Technology Officer talking about the risks that AI poses. Now, I think the WF says something like around 69 million jobs are likely to disappear as a result of AI, but also there's something around 95,000 million jobs are likely to come as a result of AI. And for those of you, I don't know, when I was at school, we learned lots about the movement against the technology, against the Industrial Revolution, and the various movements that went against that because people were worried that their jobs were going to be lost. And in fact, those jobs just created new jobs. And I think that's very much the same here. I think the issue we've got here all around the world, and particularly in India, which is such a large country where you've got this demographic dividend, and we've been talking about this for years, is how to ensure that the young generation have those skills that they need to fill the jobs that are coming up. Something like 1 million jobs in AI are going to be needed by 2026 in India. So how do you bring about, coalitions between the government, academics, academia, civil society, social platforms such as Meta to bring about and work together so that they can address those issues and help work together to make sure that young people have the skills and the knowledge that they need to meet the demands that are coming up. Because if we don't do that collectively, we've got a massively missed opportunity, particularly in a country this size with such a huge young population. Right all over the world, we've got aging populations. And in fact, it's interesting that most young people now feel less equipped to deal with the changes that are coming out in terms of as do older people, which is a really interesting piece of information. Do you think that young people would be much more confident about this? But actually, most surveys say that they're not. And the reason that they say that they're not is because they're scared, because they haven't seen those changes come about. So I think it's incumbent on us all to ensure that the coming generations have those skills to meet the demand that we have.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the time as well. So a couple of minutes for each panelist to quickly. Yeah.
So I think for us, we have the singular vision of how can mentorship, career mentorship via digital platforms become an integral part of the college experience for young people, right? And that's 43 million young people. So we're thinking actively of what role. We've created this technology platform already that's doing a great job of, say, connecting a young student in Karimnagar to a mentor who's sitting somewhere else. We're thinking definitely of the role of AI. And we've been asked, do you think, will there be a need for mentors, right? Like you can ask ChatGPT and get all the answers to whatever question you have. And I'd like to say that there are two aspects, I think, just so what is the future of technology and AI in mentoring? Mentoring is always seen as in the lens of like relational support, which you get because of the relationship with a mentor, and then the sort of more instrumental goal-based support, right? What can that get you to? And I think that the relational support of mentoring is in no danger of going away, because young people sign up because they want that person who can listen to them, right? Who can hear them out and give them non-judgmental advice and just continue that conversation in a very authentic way. So I think that way the need for mentors is just going to increase for the same things that you said, Ian, of isolation and fears and uncertainties.
And just to come back on that, I think there's certain things that you simply cannot get from technology. I'm from a working class family. My grandparents were coal miners, and I was considered quite bright at school and went to a state, as you call it, a government school. And I remember going to a Model UN at the age of 15 and being absolutely crushed to find that everyone there was a public school kid. That's a private school kid, what we call in the UK, public school kid. So all the educational markers that had marked me out as being fairly bright just disintegrated when I was put in front of a group of people from privately educated families, from families' wealth, the way that they dressed, the way that they spoke, the hairstyles that they had, and that can be crushing. And I think that's one thing we don't take into account, is that with social mobility, is you can give skills all you need, but it's only people like mentors and human relationships that can help you navigate that way. And if you're making your journey into, say, a corporate structure, and you're not from the typical kind of English-speaking, privately educated group that moves in those ways, you need support from
Yes.
people to help you navigate. What are the verbal cues that you need to navigate personal relationships? What it takes to be able to dress to fit in, and there's no amount of AI or technology
Yes.
that can do that, right?
Yes, absolutely. So that relational component is going to be still what young people need. I see a lot of scope for AI to help with the instrumental, or like how to mentor, right? Like how do you, or what should a mentor say as an answer, or if a mentee asks a question which they don't know necessarily, they don't have the resources to. So very much like the co-pilot model of AI to sort of be the support for whether it's the teacher or the ASHA worker, we see a huge sort of role for that to support mentors or people who have the intention to mentor but need the skills and the capacity. So yes, so that's a little bit of stargazing for us in terms of what the future of mentorship could look like. I also think it could do wonders in matchmaking, because we find that actually the idiosyncrasies of what makes a good mentoring match is far beyond like a form, right? And we're very excited by the potential of AI to, read a simple paragraph of a mentee maybe saying, I'm worried about this and I want this as a mentor, and then a mentor's like life statement, which doesn't have to be put into check boxes. So we're very excited about moving what's our current algorithm from being very sort of rule-based one into a maybe more neural network-based algorithm. So that's what, and if there's anyone doing work on that, please reach out to us. We're very excited to build the future of mentoring technology.
Thank you, Arundhati. Shruti?
I think when it comes to threats, there's one that I see which is huge. With technology going to the last mile, the digitally vulnerable population in India is increasing, and how. But when I talk about the digitally vulnerable population, I don't mean just the people who fall prey to scams. I also mean those young school students who don't know how to use technology in the right way and manner and end up creating a scam. There are those two, because without the right mentorship, and I'm sure a lot of people have panchayat in their heads, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So I think, Arundhati, we're all coming back to mentorship. Without that guidance, I think technology can go, that's a dark path, right? But the opportunities are immense. I think we truly believe that technology builds inclusion. And, we've seen it in some of the programs that we do. We've been able to go to aspirational districts, like Natasha said, the use of local languages. We work with Bhashini, and they are using AI to make sure that our content is contextualized in local languages. And that's a huge potential, right? Technology also has created a huge scope for innovation. We are seeing this amazing rise in social innovation happening today. And when social innovation happens at scale with the support of the right stakeholders, what it does is that in a country like India, again, where there are so many different aspects that we need to keep in mind, innovation is needed. For the right solution, it's not going to be just plug and play, right? You have to customize, you have to innovate, and constantly redo it. So I think that there's a huge potential there. And finally, I think I would like to leave this room with one thought in mind. We do a lot of panel discussions, and all of us go back agreeing to collaborate. But how many of us actually do? How many of us actually go back and connect the dots? So I think there needs to be somebody whose job is just to connect the dots. And truly, I think that's the need of the day today, and that's where the opportunity is.
Great point. Shruti? Yes, Natasha.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Just to say, I think when we talk about digital literacy or digital skills that we need to empower generation, I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where we say that our work is done and we've now reached the point that it is all good. Just given the demographic dividend that Ian spoke to, given our numbers, we are always going to have, especially the young, come online. We're always, given where we are today, at least for the foreseeable future, going to have those who should have perhaps had access earlier but want it now a bit later, and they deserve that access when they are ready for it, and we need to get those technologies and that skilling to them. So I think that I still, however, look at it as the glass definitely being full, and not to say that one is ignorant of the challenges, but given the hunger, given the appetite that one is seeing from different sections, from young women entrepreneurs, from women kind of a little late on in their entrepreneurial journeys, from students, from teachers, just from different sections, just given how people want to understand, want to learn, coming from parts of India, like I mentioned, where all of this hasn't really been accessible anymore, for wanting to speak to someone in their native language online, from just the talent pool that we have is just so massive. It's just that they're not having the access to a lot of the markets when we talk about women entrepreneurs. So I think just being able to identify that all of us can make that little small difference, and there are pieces of the puzzle that I think all of us can bring in together. And I think working together is an opportunity to do that. Working for a technology company, I'm of course quite excited about the opportunity that AI will bring as well. So thank you for the number, and I think that's exactly what it is, that the new job creation is something that we are not speaking through. Therefore, those AI skills, because while it might take away jobs, it will also create a lot more. So just being future ready, and we're getting a lot of that and a lot of appetite and hunger on like, what will it take to be prepared for jobs of tomorrow? And I think that is where a lot of thought and advocacy, et cetera, needs to go in to kind of make sure that we have that pipeline that is ready when they're ready to access it as well.
Right.
Yeah. So I think, in my opinion, this as we are seeing AI and the huge proliferation of the tech, one critical aspect is securing all, which is also very critical aspect. And if I talk about AI, it's beyond the talent pool or jobs. It is everywhere and for everyone, irrespective whether the person is a farmer, whether they are an ASHA worker, or they are like working professional, because AI is more likely an enabler. So I feel that everyone, it's now becoming a life skill that way, that everyone should know how to use AI to their advantage. While, as other panelists highlighted, it's also like people can use it to the other, like a negative, dark side of the thing. So those all the AI governance aspects needs to be, I think, like put in place. Globally, a lot of forums and consortiums are already active, while we do not see too much of governance around AI. So I think that is the area which, as collective, as a country in India, as well as a global aspect, we need to have those governance framework around AI, how we use it to the advantage and rather than to the other side.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that was a very interesting discussion, and we've discussed numbers, pie charts, spreadsheets, but also sagas, tales. On the other hand, it's important to have a mix of both the head and the heart to tackle any problem, and a problem at scale. We're talking about taking along 691 million women with the rest of India. So that's a huge problem to be tackled. There are innovative solutions, as we have heard and seen. But what is probably needed also is about communicating some of the success stories that one sees happening. Not enough is done around that. And last but not the least, it's important for all stakeholders to come together to tackle problems at scale. So partnerships and collaboration being extremely key to tackling any social problem. I'd like to end on that note. I do not see any questions on the... Okay. All right. So there's a tech problem, unfortunately. That's cannot be forgiven. But
So if there are questions, I will just pass this around, being the human bond. Okay.
Hi, my name is Sriyoshi. I'm from Antarang Foundation. One of the gaps that I think that I've also seen before career readiness in young girls is also career aspirations, right? There was a recent UNICEF report which says that young girls only aspire for 7 careers, only think that there are only 7 career options available for them. And to bridge one of those gaps, I think what my organization did a few years ago was create a chatbot which disseminates career information. It has information on role models. It has information on how do you build self-awareness and how do you make informed career decisions. But one of the biggest challenges that we've had is the adoption of that bot. It's a WhatsApp bot. It's available in multiple languages. Anyone who wants it can reach out to him, by the way. It's open access, it's free of cost, and yet adoption has been really, really difficult. I wanted to ask if any of the panelists can tell us how, if they face this challenge, and if yes, how do you solve for this?
May I go? You're sitting next to two women here who are doing a brilliant job in this, right? One is to you, both of them sit to your right. So Meenakshi and Parallel have developed over years a brilliant program, Manual Career Highway, which is a whole set of brilliant tests that look at aptitude, psychometric testing, ability, inventory testing, and they match them to modern 21st century careers, right from those who are, high academic scores to less so. And I'm very proud that our organization at BT supported them a couple of years ago to take that brilliant program, which is very laborious and manual, and we put it on, we digitized it for them so we can reduce the time that it takes, and we now have that on an app. So this enables women and young people, not just women, at scale, to do a whole series of tests that enable them to identify, realistic careers that they have a chance of success in, and to then look at career paths as they go forward and identify the career paths and the academic or training or vocational training that they need to do to go ahead there. And I think as part of the device library that I mentioned earlier, I think something like with 100 handsets, we were able to deliver 12,000 career highway programs and an additional 5,000 digital literacy programs in Haryana a couple of years ago. So talk to those. You're identically dressed today, Paralumera. I don't know was that deliberate, but that's a really, really terrific program that you could work together on perhaps for that.
If I can add.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could add that I completely feel your feel your pain, because a lot of times it seems like technology is the silver bullet, right? You'll create this platform and then like the millions will come, right? And it doesn't work that way with young people especially. We've had to put a lot of feet on the ground and explain to funders why our program costs a certain way, because they're like, oh, you created the platform, that's it, right? We're like, no, we actually have to do a lot to take this to colleges and students. So for us, what's worked, what I mentioned earlier, which is the partnerships with the government, because for instance, like the body that I mentioned, Telangana Academy for Skills and Knowledge, they do a great job to take us to all the colleges to host awareness sessions. We've realized that it's not enough for us to go once a year to the college. We now have to create like a full year-long mentee awareness partnerships just to keep seeding the idea of what this is, right? So that maybe that one time then they'll access the bot. They're like, oh yes, I've heard about career awareness so many times, let me send a message, right? It'll never work if it's just that one time. So I think that's also education we all can do as non-profits, that technology is not going to replace all the hard work that we all do to put people on the ground to actually take these to make sure people use these services.
I have a question. So since we are discussing about digital pathways for young women, so I would like to request you all to reflect on a topic that, so we are working with the students, like after 12th grade students, so we have a lot of girls, like more than 50% of participation in our programs. So, but still there are many cases that where students don't have a phone. Like at the home, like I got my first Android phone when I was in 3rd year of my bachelor degree. So that was also for 6,000. So, and so there are many girl students who do not have a single Android phone in their family since today. Like till today, they don't have. And if they have there are many families where girls are not able to access the phone. So, ki kuch hoga, kuch, we shall get maybe into relationship or whatever. Like, there are so many reasons. So, people don't allow to use Android phones for the girls. Second is that there are, so considering the circumstances, so social, economical, also their surroundings. So, living in a rural area, they do not have a kind of background where they can aspire for anything. So how do we tackle that problem? Because they can't see anyone growing around them. they do not have they do not have any single role model, I would say that. So how do we tackle that? Because since they do not have an aspiration, so how do we mentor them? How do we tell them? How do we convince them? So as we are like being from them, one of them, so we are also struggling actually. How do we make them convince?
So power of access, how do you solve for that, essentially?
I think I'll take that. The role of the local community there, and whoever is the DM in your area, because today it's not like what it was 10 years ago. Today I think there are a lot of active people in the administration who are willing to work with the civil society to make sure that access happens. At least that's what we are seeing today, in our programs. And you're right, sometimes, and I think I brought it up before also, if you go with just that, okay, come, let's do this course, it's great, it's not going to happen. You have to tell them why. How will it add to X amount in their bank account by the end of, whatever time? How will it make them financially independent? I think those are very clear figures that you have to give them before they will really look into investing their time, or they will get access to. Actually, if it's a decision of getting access to a device, then
But there is access. In many cases, there are access, but there are no aspirations. So this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because of their circumstances, maybe social, economical, and the surroundings. That one I would say.
Yeah, I think community role models, there are a lot of self-help groups which we found to be, very active. In our programs, what has worked is having this one mentor, who actually goes sometimes. So we have a lot of digital resource centers set up in aspirational districts. We set up these centers and waited for people to come. Nobody did. What then we had to do was give one person who was like a change agent, or like a didi in that local community. We handed her a tab. She went to each household and told them, okay, this is what the tab can do, this is what technology can do. That's when footfall started to happen. I think that local support, the community has to come together. You need to find the local community support system around you.
But there are no single role model in many communities, in many villages actually. So we really struggle for that.
I think then it's up to us, for groups like these, do get in touch with us. Maybe we will be able to point you to, a local group in your, in the area that you're looking at. Maybe that will help. So do get in touch with us.
Great. So the screen out there says time's up. And on that note, thank you to each and every one of you. I think you've been a great panel. Thank you, and thank you for being such a great audience. Thank you so much.
I know there was a request for a few more questions, but I'm just going to tag on to what Shruti said. Don't let the conversation end here. It is on us to collaborate outside of this room, so it would be lovely if you can take your further questions and conversations. In the meanwhile, like really quick update. This is technically the end of the sessions part of it, but we do have some entertainment at dinner. So please do stay around till 7, and we have the Kulte Khan project at the Stein Auditorium at 7. And we'll see you there.